tonight. So without further ado, our first storyteller is a senior at White Station. She also has had an internship with New Memphis this summer, and she's ready to tell her comeback story. Shreya Ganesh, everyone. Shreya Ganesh.
Today I kind of just wanted to talk about like my story. It's kind of just like about like kind of my burnout. I'm like 14, so as Josh said, I'm a senior at White Station, and I guess my story kind of starts out like freshman year, like the first day of freshman year. And so a little bit before that, like in 7th and 8th grade, I was like kind of battling a little bit of depression and like already burnout. Like I was struggling to find like my motivation and like just the reason why I was doing things, and it was just like hard to like get up in general. But you know, freshman year, that's when my story kind of starts. Like even then I was thinking that like that is when the real world starts. Like after that comes college, after that comes like a real job, and that was just like my path of thinking. So on my first day, I like really didn't know what to expect. Like I have an older sister, but I feel like just telling it isn't enough. So I didn't know what to expect, and I was very optimistic because even though I was struggling in like middle school, I was like, that's just because it's middle school. Like I'm used to like having work and stuff by now. But I was just so optimistic, and I was like, you know, like I bet I can do this. Like this is my time to like change the story. Like even if I was doing bad before, this is where it changes. So freshman year starts. At first, I didn't really feel myself struggling as much. I was like, again, I was super optimistic about it. I was like, oh wow, like I'm challenging myself with all these hard courses, and I'm like in all these clubs. But eventually, I could feel myself like starting into this cycle where it was just like, wake up, go to school, go to this practice, and then all these other classes I took outside of school. So I was really feeling myself like fall apart very quickly. School was hard, like my like social life was hard, like I was struggling with my friends, and like I just don't think we were like there at the right time in the right place. I wasn't like surrounding myself with the best people, but I didn't really have time to think about that. I was like, this is just how it is, like this is just school, like it's hard for everybody, not just me. But the school year goes on, and then one day I'm in my first period, and the person sitting in front of me gets a text from his brother being like, it was a screenshot of a tweet from our superintendent being like, oh, like you have a half day, and like the next day's off, and the week after that was spring break. So basically like you get an early spring break is what all I was hearing. And literally like 2 minutes later the bell rang, and it was like wild in the halls. Like everybody was like screaming, everybody was like whooping, and basically we did nothing else for the rest of the day. And I was, in my head I was just like, okay, like early spring break, like this is easy. And that day, like it was a half day that day, so like while I was like waiting for my mom to like pick me up from school, I remember kind of like standing there with my friends being like, this feels different than like other half days, because like our school has had like random half days like on the spot, but this didn't really feel like the other ones. But you know, you kind of don't know the impact of something like afterwards, so it was just like me saying something. But so the next week was spring break, but I was expecting that because that was already scheduled in our schedule. So I was just like, I already had exams and stuff coming up, because this was like at the beginning of April, so right after that it's like AP exams and like end of course exams. So I still had things to do. Like I was still like grinding. I was like, I have to like practice for this, I have to study for this, like do all these assignments, because we're going back to school the week after. And then we get another week off, but still I'm like, I did not ever expect to not be there for the rest of the year. So I'm still studying, like working, like at least trying to at that point. And then the announcement comes out like, you're done for the rest of the year. And I don't even know what to do with myself at that point. I'm just like, thanks. And so I'm like, okay, this is just a really, really long spring break. And I just didn't even know what to do with myself, because we had no classes. So it was like finally, like I got like a little bit of a break, but I wasn't planning on doing anything. So I just like sat around. And then at, like right before my sophomore year, I actually moved houses. And I feel like that was like the first start of like me like really going on a journey of like kind of self-discovery. So like after I moved houses, like I finally like got my own space, and like I feel like people weren't like breathing down my neck as much, because now everybody was busy like moving, and like that was right when sophomore year started. So White Station actually chose to do sophomore year online. So like the whole year was just online. So I was just like in my room. Like I already knew what to expect at that point. Like I've sat in my room 1,000 times before. And so I was ready. I didn't really know what to expect school-wise, because like we didn't even have laptops before that September. But at the start, I was optimistic, but like I hadn't known how that went before, so I was like a little bit more scared this time. But as the school year started, like it went on, like it really took me on a journey. So like one of the first things that I really learned was my own independence. I never really had the kind of autonomy to just like do things on my own before. A lot of the stuff was just like who I surround myself with, so like circumstances, like friends, and just like the clubs I'm in. I'd be in a club because like my sister was in a club, or because like my close family friends were in a club. I didn't really like know what I wanted to do, or like why I wanted to do it. So now that I was at home or in my room by myself, and like my parents were busy with their own thing because all of us were working from home, so like they didn't really even have time to worry about me at that point. And so that was like the time where I really finally found my own like reason. Like I was like, why do I even do any of this? And I had not done so well freshman year, as I said before. And I remember watching this video of this girl being like, still my main point was college. So the video, the girl was like, even if you did bad in 1 year, like if you did bad like freshman year or like sophomore year, just do better in the other years. Like tell a story was the main thing. I feel like that like flipped a switch to me. I was like, yeah, like I should tell a story, and like just 1 year like doesn't really define me. And so from that point on, I feel like I really picked up. Like I finally found my reason to do things. I was like, oh, not just because like you're supposed to do high school, like you're supposed to do college or whatever. It was because like I wanted to tell a story, and I wanted to like prove to myself, because like I wasn't just doing it for other people's like validation. I was doing it because I wanted to like say like I could do things on my own. And then I think that kind of leads into like the second main thing that I learned, which is kind of like my passion. Before I really didn't have any like reason to get up. Like again, I was just doing things because that's just the way it was. And my sister had moved back from college, like back home because of COVID. And I remember having a conversation with her. She's like one of the most passionate people I've ever met. Like every single job she's ever had, like it's because she believes in it. She doesn't just like do a job just like every job she's had, she would do it without pay. She just believes in every single thing she does. And I feel like that inspired me. Like before, even though I found my independence, like I wanted to prove it to myself, that doesn't have any greater meaning outside of myself. So I was like, I feel like I learned so much from her, because like every single job, like I swear, every single thing she did was for other people, and like because she wanted to make a larger impact. And I feel like I've always been like a very large personality, but I never really know what to do with it. Like I kind of just like talked a lot. I didn't really know what to like direct my energy towards. And so finally like witnessing my sister and like being right next to her when she had all these calls and meetings and things like that, realized like I can make that change too. And that sparked something inside of me to like constantly like be the change. Like I never really thought of it like that before, like, oh, like, wow, it's so good what they're doing, but I never really thought that was something I could do realistically. But watching her do it, like even on a small scale, was so inspiring to me. And the third thing was I really changed the people who the relationships that I surrounded myself with. A lot of the friends I had made freshman year, because I was like, new start, right? So I made all these new friends, but they were all like circumstantial. It was like, just because I sat next to them in a class, that doesn't make us like actual friends. Like, oh yeah, I know what you're doing for homework in this class. I don't know anything else about you. So now that we were all online, every interaction that I made, like every text I sent, like everything like that, was like a large step I was taking. Like it wasn't just like you're sitting there and I'm like turning my head. It's like I had to like actually like find you and like actually ask about your life. And the same thing came like the other way. And I made so many new friends, like just by like talking about my life. Like before, I was always a friend that just asked about other people's life. I never really said anything about mine. But over like online school, I was able to talk about myself, and now I was able to make all these new relationships and all these new friendships that like were mutually beneficial for once. They weren't just like weights on my shoulders. So the sophomore year ends and I'm like feeling good. You know, I've worked on myself so much, I've learned so much about myself. And then junior year, so it's just right around the corner at that point, and I'm feeling better. Like every year I'm like, yeah, I'm optimistic. Like we all see how that works out. So but I feel actually better because I know I've worked on myself. Like sophomore year was like one of the most like trialing years ever. Like so many new things, so many things I never had to work about before, and so finally, like first day of junior year, it was like I was finally like stepping into the shoes I had been making for like the past year. I was finally able to talk to all these people that I had met before, but like never really got to interact with in person. I was finally able to use my newfound independence to like do the things that I thought were best for me, like all the clubs I wanted to do, sign up for all the classes I wanted to do. And same thing with my passion. I was able to volunteer and like find all these new opportunities that I would have never found without like my sister, or just like listening to those meetings and conversations. And so junior year went by so fast. I thought junior year would be the year that I would be the most frustrated and like stressed out about, because that's always what they say, you know, junior year is like your most important year. I think all the years are important, but like that was important to me because that was the year I finally like, it felt like I was like reading a bunch of textbooks and this was like finally the exam. And like I finally got to like use and it wasn't difficult. It was just like, before it was just like, that was just how it was. Like that was just the cycle I was stuck in. But now it's like every choice I made was something I chose to do. I like had to work to do it, which made everything more like special and meaningful to me. And so now I'm a senior in high school and like literally all my relationships and everything, it's been such like so helpful. And a huge thing, like I can like feel it, like my progression from like 3 years ago to now. When I used to think about college applications, I was like, it was like a cloud over my head. Like I could like wait for it to like thunderstorm every time I like thought about something like 4 years in the future. I was like so scared. Now it's like, I'm like staring right at it, but I'm like, it's just another exam. Now that I'm like, I feel so prepared, because now I feel like my actions speak for themselves. Before I feel like I had to like, my resume wasn't enough, which is, your resume doesn't need to speak for you, but like now every single like interaction and like relationship I make, like every single person I've ever talked to has had that impression, like I work for what I want and like I care about the things that I do. So before I would have to be like, I feel like I have to like run after and explain, be like, no, but like I swear I'm good. But now I'm so confident in myself and like in my actions and the things that I do. Like I'm so proud of myself, I would say. And now I feel like I'm at the end of my journey. Like this is my comeback story. Like junior year, that first day, I don't even know how I did it, honestly. Like it was so stressful. It was like the culmination of like 1,000 things from like all of my life before. But yeah, that's my story. It's like, I feel like it's finally, this is such a satisfying end, especially because it's my senior year. I'm like literally by like December, it's like everything's all wrapped up with a nice little bow. And like I'm so confident in myself, and I feel like this journey of like learning who I am and like learning how like the people who surround me make you who you are is so important. I'm glad that like I learned that. And like before high school, I really was like, oh, like I want my life to be like a little teen movie. I'm so glad my life was more like a really rough coming of age movie. Like it was rough. I was like struggling every single time. But I'm so glad it's like that, because as I said, like I've always had such like a loud personality. And now I feel like I can finally like direct it in the right places in a like productive way. So yeah, that's my story.